Hello everyone and welcome to the Omega Metroid podcast. My name is Andy Spiteri, joined as always by Dakota Lasky. Dak, how are you doing on this monumentous weekend?
I am doing absolutely spectacular. I'm feeling good. I'm ready to talk some Metroid. I slept in today, through into the afternoon, and the first thing I did when I woke up, I was like, I'm ready to talk about some Hydro Station. I was dreaming about it. So yeah, I'm ready to go. It's Sunday, and yeah, not all is well, but for right now, things are okay. Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I'm doing well. I hope you're doing well too.
I'm doing pretty good. I can't complain. It's freezing cold here, but whatever. I was I was celebrating a little bit yesterday, but also I got to play a little AM2R yesterday. And as you mentioned, we are back with another Mapping Metroid episode here. It seems like it's been a while. It's actually been 10 episodes since we last went into Mapping Metroid. So I'm excited to get into a little bit of detail analysis here of one of my favorite areas in AM2R, the Hydro Station. But before we get there, there's two things that we should maybe cover. The first of them is actually it's not anything related to video games or Metroid at all, but I wanted to give a quick shout out to my man Alex Trebek. He just passed away today. Canadian icon, probably the best game show host of all time. So I always enjoyed kind of popping Jeopardy on Netflix and just listening to it in the background. So shout out to my man Alex. Rest in peace.
Absolutely.
Second thing that we should bring up is we had a lot of feedback to our episode last week on how to make a good Federation Force game. A lot of people over in the Metroid Database Discord, which if you are not a part of, you can join in and get in on the conversation. A lot of people told us that basically what they wanted to see was like a Star Wars Battlefront game, but Federation Force style. I don't know. I've never played those games. But I think that you said that you had, right, Dak? And what do you think about that?
Not in a long time. I mean, I played the original Battlefronts and the new ones as well. I think like Rogue Company, or not Rogue. I'm not like the hugest Star Wars fan. I think you were saying that too before this.
Yeah, me neither.
And I'm a Republic Commando. That's what it was, which Duminal mentioned as well in our mentions on the podcast Twitter. So yeah, there are like some other good examples of squad-based games. The Star Wars like Battlefront and Republic games have done well, at least in some capacity. So yeah, I mean, there are probably tons of ways to fix Federation Force, right? Like we could definitely do a whole episode like talking about other games it could copy and or be inspired by. And I'm sure those games would be mentioned alongside the ones that we mentioned on the episode last week. So, yeah, a lot of Star Wars recommendations. I think I know you're not going to check them out, and I think you mentioned you wouldn't, but you should, because I mean they are like not maybe the game you're into, kind of, but might give some good ideas for what you'd want from a Metroid game. Think of it as like an inspired by Metroid, but in like reverse, and you're doing research for that, right?
I was gonna say, like, maybe we should put Republic Commando on our inspired by Metroid list, because like I'm not super interested in playing Battlefront, and that's just because I kind of have that loot box foul taste in my mouth, and that's all I know about that game, right?
Oh, well, that's the new Battlefront. They're talking about the older Battlefront, the original Battlefront games.
Okay.
The original Battlefronts don't have that. Yeah. Okay. Give it a try. But yeah, we do like a reverse inspired by Metroid. It'd be like games we want Metroid to be inspired by. Play games that we like, that we think Metroid should take things from. And like the reverse of games that we think maybe have taken from Metroid or something like that. That might be a good idea for some episodes.
Well, it's kind of cool because actually, and it's funny you say that, because I do have a game that's kind of like, it's not exactly inspired by Metroid, but it kind of is. I picked it up a while ago, and I've been meaning to play through it. So that's a game, and I don't want to give it away yet, but that's a game that I think we can talk about in a future episode here. That's sort of like that, where it's not exactly inspired by Metroid, but how Metroid could be inspired by this game. So yeah, I like that. A lot of really cool suggestions from everybody. And yeah, shout out to Doominimal on Twitter who gave us like basically a film script on how to book the next the next Federation Force game.
He's
so
ready. He's ready. Put him on the team. He's ready to
He's
craft
been thinking about this for a long time. Yeah. But yeah, a lot of good feedback, so we appreciate that. It's funny, it's funny how Federation Force just turned out, because the concept was cool, but the execution was just so drab. And I hope we're not done talking about it yet. But this week we are going to be talking about Hydro Station from AM2R in Mapping Metroid. And you know what? I don't think that we've spent a ton of time, or maybe not enough time, talking about AM2R in general on this show. And I just wanted to kind of explain my views on how I see AM2R, because it's obviously not an official Zelda title, official Metroid title. It's definitely not a Zelda title. So it's not an official Metroid title, but I view it as the closest thing to, like, I don't think that it's just a fan game. Like there are some Metroid fan games out there, like Rogue Dawn and other ones that are, they're pretty decent, but they're fan games. Where this one I think is more like, this one is as close to an official Metroid game as you can possibly get without being an official Metroid game. And that's why I wanted to explore some of the areas from this game to, I don't want to say like legitimize it, but just kind of show how much we respect it and its creation, and hold it on the same level as we do a lot of other Metroid games, or at least I do.
I mean, and AM2R does a lot of things that Metroid does, but better, I think, in some ways. And I think we might get into that a good amount in this episode. We definitely got to do like a full episode on AM2R, go through it, because it definitely deserves it. It's such a good game, and it honestly has the quality of a Metroid game, if not a higher quality than 2D Metroid. So yeah, like, this is such a good game, and I'm glad we're talking about at least just a portion of it right now, because not only is it a great game, but many of you, I'm sure, have played this game or wanted to, and if you haven't, you definitely should, because yeah, it's pretty damn awesome.
It's fantastic. As someone, you know me, Dak, I love Super Metroid, right? And
no, I didn't know that.
Yeah. You didn't know that? Oh, well,
I didn't know that, dude. I didn't know that. Yeah, that's news.
AM2R is like just, I think it's the best, like, straight up Super Metroid sequel ever. Like, it's just, it feels like Super Metroid, it plays like Super Metroid, but it still has its own identity. It's just like such an amazing achievement. It was made pretty much by one guy, but he did have some people helping him, which we'll get into a little bit later. But for how good this game is, it's just, it blows my mind that, this was a passion project of one fan for, however many years, and it turns out, it's so good that we're basically putting it on the same level as official Metroid games that are made by Nintendo. So I just wanted to just kind of tell everybody up front, like, what we think of AM2R, and this won't be the last time an area from AM2R gets on Mapping Metroid, because there's so many good areas in this game. Mm-hmm. And it's very different from Samus Returns as well, which I think gives it a really unique identity. So I'm actually going to go finish the game after we're done recording here, and I'm excited as heck to play through the rest of it. But I guess we should get into the Hydro Station, and we knew that we wanted to do an area from AM2R, and my immediate thought was, okay, let's do the Hydro Station, because the first time I played AM2R, this is the area that, like, really, really stuck out to me, and I was just like, it was the area where I was like, man, like, this is Metroid. This is a really, like, great experience, and I don't know, it always just really stuck with me, and I remember my first playthrough of it. The dark, dingy, kind of like aquatic, subterranean feel, I thought was really cool and like classic Metroid, and it did remind me a lot of Super Metroid again. I thought that the Hydro Station for me was just an area that when I think about AM2R, my mind always seems to go there. And maybe it's the music, maybe it's the some of the boss fights that you have, but when I was thinking of places, I was like, yeah, this is the one that just sprung to my mind. So I thought it'd be appropriate that we start here.
No, I 100% agree. I think you took the words right out of my mouth a lot of the time, but probably said them a lot better than I would have. This definitely feels like just pure Metroid, right? Just lets you run wild in the environment. You're picking up all sorts of upgrades that are really like modifying your experience. You're getting the wave beam, you're getting the high jump boost, I believe, the spring ball, like so much stuff that just opens up the game for you in this section of it. So like it definitely reminded me too of like when you really start to like the game becomes like even more unlimited in terms of like what you can do, and like it gives you extra stuff to really start feeling like you're in control of like, and not entirely of like what you're doing. Like you're cruising, you're schmoving. You get a lot of good stuff in this one, and yeah, it feels and looks like Metroid. Like I always felt like this area was like a mixture of like what I would like usually is like a cavernous zero mission area, but like the inside of like a abandoned kind of something from Fusion. Like it has that mixture of like styles and art styles, but yeah, it's like pure quintessential Metroid here. You can just run wild. So it's definitely an area that stuck out to me for sure. And also it's like a water area too, and I feel like you always remember the water levels of any game you kind of play.
For better or worse.
Yeah, for better or for worse, exactly. So yeah, no, I 100% agree. This is such a good area. Definitely always stuck out to me as well.
And I like the fact that, Metroid 2, is just kind of like a dark and dingy game in general, and by design, right? Like you're plunging deeper and deeper into this planet. But I feel like one of the strengths of AM2R is like it's able to like have each area into the planet feel very different from one another. You get the Golden Temple, the Industrial Complex, and the Hydro Station. They all like feel different, even though functionally they're basically the same thing, where you go in and you explore and you pick out items and then you kind of move on to the next area. But yeah, I think that maybe it is the water, like you mentioned, like it's just very memorable. It always sticks out to me. I really like the idea, and they kind of borrowed this from Super Metroid and Meridia, but I like the idea of like traveling through the pipe systems and stuff like that. That always is like a thing that I think is clever in Metroid, when you can utilize your morph ball a little bit more. That always sticks out to me. And actually, the thing that I really, really love about the Hydro Station is it's a water level, yes, but if you choose, you can go right to the right side of the the left side, sorry, of the Hydro Station, and you can basically bomb out that, I don't even know what that is, like a little door or like a generator or something. Mm-hmm. There's something beside the Hydro Station that you can bomb, and the water will just slowly start to drain. So you can go in and you can get rid of it, so you don't have to constantly jump around and feel like you're 1,000 pounds in the water, which is what I know a lot of people really struggled with in Meridia, or maybe even in the in the Talon Overworld and Metroid Prime, just feeling like the water was weighing him down. The water does weigh you down in the Hydro Station, but you can also get rid of it like fairly quickly, which I appreciate.
No, definitely agree. And you're talking about like how every area feels like distinct. I feel like even the Hydro Station itself has like many different areas that feel pretty distinct from one another, like the breeding grounds area, and then like you said, like you're going through like the pipes and all that to be carried around, which I think is so cool, by the way. I love how they like you said, gave us more stuff to do with the morph ball. Yeah, this is such a I do think it's because I'm conditioned by well, you mentioned Zelda. Like I'm conditioned by games like by Zelda, where like any water level like sticks out to me really hard, because it aesthetically feels like it's always going to be different, and like ecology wise, I guess you can have like those cavernous areas, and then like the sewer kind of like concretey mixed with the more ambient like jungly overgrown area. Like it's so good. It's really well crafted, and like you said earlier, like it's the fact this is more or less like one person, like just design and style wise, like the solid taste, right? Like this is a well crafted area for sure.
Yeah, 100%. And like it is hard not to so I mean, obviously I have some critiques of the Hydro Station and AM2R in general, but it is like I feel like I'm probably a little bit more lenient than I would be critiquing like Samus Returns or Metroid Fusion, for example, like we did the last time we were doing Mapping Metroid, because like we just said that we consider it to be like on par with some Metroid games, but I mean it is a fan-made game at the same time, so I do feel like I'm a little bit more lenient with some of my criticisms. So one thing that I will just get right out of the way, which is a criticism, which you just kind of mentioned, is So every area, or a lot of areas, I should say, in AM2R have like the central kind of like the complex or whatever you want to call it. They'll have, like, for example, here you have the hydro station, and in the area where you can go in at the bottom left, and then you can go and like shoot the little barriers, and the water keeps on dropping and dropping and dropping. Eventually, you'll go in and you'll fight an Alpha Metroid in there, which is a pretty cool fight, and it's like it's in water, so you kind of got like the same theme, and it feels different than like it feels very natural to the hydro station. Whereas like one thing that I don't love as much is after you exit the hydro station and you keep going left, and then you'll sink down a little bit to the breeding grounds. Then there's three Alpha Metroids that you have to eliminate down there, and it's in kind of like the same familiar breeding ground, like the green jungle toxic area kind of aesthetic there, which I think does look really good. But I would have probably preferred to have maybe a few more Alpha Metroid fights that felt like they were like a part of the hydro station, or like maybe had the water gimmick to it, or just like something that tied it in a little bit more with the actual complex itself. This is a fairly minor critique, but it's still something that I noticed, and like I think that this actually problem persists in general in AM2R, where like you'll have these really awesome areas, and then half the Metroids will be in like, you know, the area that you're in, and then the other half will just be in like cavernous like breeding ground areas, which, you know, it makes kind of sense, but to me it's just a little bit of a missed opportunity to do some other cool rooms like the water room where you're in water, so it makes it harder to fight that Metroid. Do you think that's a fair critique?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I don't know if it's on the same, like, I didn't have that under any critique of mine necessarily, though I do agree I would have liked some more like Alpha Metroid fights, and then, you know, eventually the Gamma Metroid fight I think kind of left a little bit to be desired as well. I really don't think like the actual Metroid implementation of this area is like that fantastic, really. Like, the Metroids are kind of just, like you said, they're not really integrated into the area and take advantage of, like, the water levels, or trying to mess with that, or trying to mess with, like, the turbines, or really anything. They kind of just are there, and which is fine. It wasn't, like, you know, obviously game-breaking for you or I or whatever, but...
Right, yeah.
You know, they're, like, I remember there was one Alpha Metroid, just... Like, you know the big jet of water at the, like, the right side of that room, and you go into it and it shoots you all the way up, like, through several... Yeah, right, and there's an Alpha Metroid right there. Like, it would have been cool if, like, maybe, like, it was messing around with that machine, something like that. I don't know. That would have been cool. But, no, I'm with you there. I think that's a pretty fair critique. Not major, though.
Yeah, I mean, definitely not major, but, like, I do like that you have to... Like the one that you just said, you have to use the pipes to get to the Metroid, or like you have to contend with the fact that like you're jumping in water, which makes you slower when you're fighting the Alpha Metroid. Like when you go down into like the breeding areas, and you fight, I think there's 3 Alpha Metroids there. Like they're pretty much all the same.
No, yeah,
they're the same fight. It's just like,
well, that's an issue that Samus Returns had too. It's like you end up just having the same fight over and over again. And, like, I get that's, like, the point of the game, because, like, that's what the original was, and they're, like, remaking that. So, like, I understand why it is what it is, but, yeah, that's my same critique with Samus Returns. I felt that when I was playing this, too. It was just, like, I'm having essentially the same fight. More, like, there are only a few instances where it felt, like, somewhat unique, because, like, okay, there was water or whatever it is. But otherwise, yeah, I feel like, you know, there are redundant boss fights. You just got to do it because that's like the point of the game. You're supposed to be killing these Metroids, but like I really do wish the encounters were a little more unique, which I think they could have done. There's like so many unique like things you can do with the fights, but this area I also felt was already a pretty creative area in terms of like, you know, the pipe system, like then the turbines. Like I thought that, and you know, changing the water levels, like that did it for me. That was really cool. But like the same kind of ingenuity I don't think was applied to like the enemy encounters, other than Arachnus, really, to be honest. I thought the Arachnus fight was great, and we'll get into that. But everything else, you know, I think, I wish maybe would have felt more ingrained into the area and like really took more advantage of where they were, rather than just being the same fights more or less over and over.
And you know what? That's actually probably my single biggest critique. So I'm just getting that out of the way right at the top here of this area. Is like, some of the Metroid fights did feel a little bit distant from the actual Hydro Station. Some of them didn't, which is great, but like half of them did. So, I mean, that being said, like I'll go back and like I really do love this area. There's a lot of like really good stuff here, and one thing that I really like that AM2R in particular, maybe over Samus Returns does this, is like kind of gives you the history and the reasoning behind why these stations or like why these structures are actually there. Like when you get to the Hydro Station, you can scan the area and it'll tell you like this is a reservoir for pumping clean water throughout this entire cave system, and it really kind of to me adds to the feel of the world that you're in, because it's like, okay, like this was a society that people lived in, and like this is something that would exist in like an actual society. And like you kind of see this throughout the whole game actually, where like you have the Temple of Worship and the Golden Temple, and then you have like the mining facility a little bit deeper down. And I think that AM2R does a really good job of that. And like it was just like always stuck with me. Like it was really refreshing to see an explanation as to like what the structure is, why there's a Hydro Station here, what its purpose was. And I thought that it was, to me, that really augmented kind of the world of SR388.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think it's kind of, not having seen the Hydro Station, you could probably assume that Chozo also need water, and maybe use the bathroom. But it is nice to see this. There's a dichotomy between like, even with this and Samus Returns versus like the Prime games, where like in Prime, like the Chozo there, they still feel like very mystical, like, and ancient in a way, and this game as well as Samus Returns, but I think this game does it really well, is it feels very lived in. Like this was a real civilization that had similar needs to any other other society. A lot of ways you got to have a working water system to keep a large group of people alive, right? And it makes it feel that more real. So yeah, I like that like interpretation of the Chozo, and I think Samus Returns and AM2R are really not too far off in that respect, because they both kind of do this. I think give like that lived in, like real civilization quality to the Chozo that the Prime games I don't think do to the same extent. So yeah, I think this was always really cool, and I think in exploring like these old structures is awesome, because you do like get to learn about why they're here, as you said, and walk in the same places that the Chozo were also walking and use the same systems. I love like this kind of like exploring the left behind remnants of the Chozo, and AM2R really nails that. So yeah, I'm 100% with you on that.
Yeah, and it's like I feel like the whole game is really good at that. And it feels like maybe you were kind of talking about Metroid Prime and the Chozo there. To me, the difference is like, it feels like in Metroid Prime, like the Chozo have been gone for like forever, but in this one, it feels like they just left.
Exactly,
like,
yeah, like it wasn't too long ago. Maybe not they just left, but it wasn't like forever ago. Whereas, in some ways, I feel like the Chozo were on Talon not too long ago from when Samus showed up, but it feels like it was so long ago. In this game, it was probably not too long ago, but it feels like it was very recent. Like they left the oven on. And they dipped, right, and it's and it was very like the lights are still on, right, but no one's home, in a way.
Yeah, totally, and I think that really adds again to me to the whole like, I just really love that everything has a purpose, and like the purpose of the Hydro Station is like so logical, and it's so simple, but like it also lends itself to be a really cool area for Samus to go and explore. So I think that it does a really good job of that. Let's talk about some of the enemies that are kicking around in the Hydro Station here. So as we kind of mentioned, we have 6 Metroids that we need to fight off in the Hydro Station. 5 Alpha and 1 Gamma. We kind of talked a little bit about the Metroids and maybe they could have been more integrated with the Hydro Station here. But I want to talk about some of the other enemies that always kind of stick with me, which the first and foremost, speaking of Star Wars at the top of the show, is like those little turret enemies. Do these things not remind you of droids from Star Wars and like the Phantom Menace, like the ones that can never hit anything or whatever? Like they just look exactly like them to me.
Well, I can see in your notes that you are not a big fan of these turrets.
No.
I kind of like them. They do have that same like droid kind of quality where they're just like these hapless things like popping in and out and trying to get a shot on you, but like you can easily destroy them. But I love the design. I like the quick ones that pop out of the ground. I thought these are cool. They are annoying at times for sure. Like sometimes I go into a room like, oh my god, like just please. But I love that design.
Let me clarify. So I had an expletive beside my description of these turrets here, but it's kind of like it's a show of respect because they're so annoying and they're so hard to hit before you get the wave beam that that I was just like, oh, god damn these things. But I think that they're great enemies, and they're logical enemies too because it makes sense that like the Chozo would install these droids to protect this facility, which I also appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like those. There's actually another, I don't know what the enemy name is, but it's like a hopping droid, and these things are like
the one-eyed ones?
So tough. They have like the two springy legs, and they move. They jump side to side. You get to control one of the droids later in the game, and you carry a super missile, and you bomb a super section later in AM2R. But they're just incredibly tough to defeat. They take like 5 missiles or something to get rid of, and if you're if you're just throwing charge shots at them, like forget about it. They're quite tough, and there's an area towards the bottom of the Hydro Station where like you drop down, and then there's one of these stupid hopping droids, and then you have to go and bomb the wall, and of course you can't shoot it, so you have to get down and bomb it, and like there's one of them hopping at you, and then once you bomb it, there's another one hopping at the other side, so like, and they do some pretty decent damage to you actually. So I always like, these are another one that I always hated running into these things. I actually usually just run away whenever I see them.
I think might be thinking of the same ones. Like they're kind of like palish, like gray or brown with like a red eye in the middle, and they have like kind of mandibles, but then like the right and left like hoppers and whatever. They remind me of I don't remember what they're called, but like the bad guy robots or mechs in Gundam, like the original Gundam, like those one-eyed. I don't know if you ever watched Gundam before, but I forget what they're called. I gotta look it up now. And they look like that, and those always stuck out to me. And then you also wrote down the other enemy that I was gonna say, so I'm gonna steal it from you. The ones that move in like the diamond pattern while you're those are so cool because like that's such a distinct enemy pattern. I don't think any other enemy in like Metroid really has or uses too much, if at all. Those stuck out to me the most, so I'm gonna steal that one from you.
Hey, that's okay with me. Those ones I think are just like really, really interesting because they almost look Metroid-y to me. Like they don't quite look like Metroids. And when I say Metroids, I mean like your base form Metroids on alphas or anything like that. But yeah, I always remember it was just like they move in this weird diamond kind of a shape, and maybe I'm just not remembering correctly, but I can't recall any other enemy in Metroid that just kind of floats almost in place like that. Like you have rippers that kind of go back and forth, but I don't know. These ones always stuck out to me, and especially because like when you're going up the side of the Hydro Station to get to the top, or like you're trying to sneak in to get the item upgrades on the sides, I felt like these guys are always in the way. Like,
they're just lingering right there, and they're quick too. Like they're not like going in a slow. Like they're quickly going from one like little burst of movement to another. Right? Like they're a cool enemy.
Yeah.
I wish Metroid had more of these enemy types that had like these distinctly unique and different movement patterns. Right? Because this enemy immediately stuck out to me. By the way, I googled what I was looking for. The word I was looking for was Zaku, the Zaku mechs from Gundam, but now as I've looked them up, I realize they don't look like them too much. Maybe the Zaku too. If any Gundam fans out there, please help me here. I'm dying out here. But anyway, the diamond enemies stuck out to me the most. Those are, I guess, if I had like pick an enemy, right, from this area, that was my favorite. If we're not counting Arachnus, because Arachnus is my boy right now. I'm going for these little dudes.
Yeah, they're pretty cool, but I guess we might as well talk about it. Let's talk about the bosses in this area, and I guess really only boss. But you know what? Since since the Ancient Guardian kind of lives in between the Golden Temple and the Hydro Station, maybe we should give our boy just a quick shout out here. Maybe we should. I wasn't planning on this, but maybe we can.
I was thinking,
what do you think about this boss?
The golden head statue. I thought it was a cool boss. Now that I think about it more, it's definitely like more aligned like aesthetically with the temple area. But I thought this was a cool boss. This is, again, I think the bosses in AM2R are pretty across the board unique and like creative. And I like this one where you have like the closing spike walls, right? Enemies where you kind of stand below them and like shoot at them from below or right up to them aren't like that, uncommon in the Metroid franchise or anything Metroid related media, right? But right. I like this, like this small, tight, like interim kind of boss between areas that you take on, and the spiky walls on the sides just like stuck out to me. It fits like that kind of like temple booby trap kind of idea, right? So yeah, I thought this was a cool boss.
I agree. I thought this was a cool boss too. So Ancient Guardian, that's the name of this thing.
Right. I
always want to call it something else, but you kind of took the words out of my mouth. I like the fact that like the walls kind of close in on you, and it kind of adds to like the tension of this fight, because eventually, and this happened to me last night when I was playing, I was just spamming missiles and I was being reckless, so I ran out of missiles. So I'm sitting there just like shooting at it, literally nowhere to go. I'm just getting pelted by all the different lasers and stuff like that, and I won, but it wasn't as close as maybe, or it was closer than it should have been anyways. But I think that this is like, I think that you're right. I think that AM2R has like almost uniformly great boss fights. We were talking right before we got on air. I was playing this this morning as well, just to finish the game, and I was just fighting the chorizo, which I feel like is just such an awesome fight. But I think that Ancient Guardian was pretty cool too. And actually, I think that Arachnus is awesome. And this is, I guess, would have been his third appearance in a Metroid game at this point, because he showed up in Metroid 2 Return of Samus, and of course in Metroid Fusion. I think that this is the best Arachnus boss fight that we probably get.
Arachnus is carrying this franchise, okay? You talk about, I want Kraid back, I want Ridley back. Put Arachnus in Metroid Prime 4. Guaranteed top tier, unforgettable boss fight if you do that. Arachnus comes out, I'm playing this game for the first time, and not recently, but the first time I played it, and seeing Arachnus, I think you echoed the same thing when I said this. I was like, and we were talking about it earlier. It's like, oh, Arachnus is here. Like, okay, hype. Like, like, all right, like kind of out of left field, but like I'm down for this. Like, sure, why not? And I thought having Arachnus show up was great. And yeah, this is the best. I think this is the best Arachnus fight, bar none. Right? Like, I don't think there's even really a competition here. I love it's not just, I was like, when I first fought Arachnus, I was like, hyped to see him, at the same time, like, knowing like what the boss fight isn't like I've already done it. But then when it was all new and different, and you had to like morph ball bomb him into the spikes at the top of the ceiling, I was like, ooh, like this is actually pretty hype, and it was a cool creative boss fight that I think is the highlight of this area, to be honest. So props to Arachnus for providing a great boss fight. I think it's one of the, like, if we're counting, across all 2D Metroid boss battles, like I think this, like when we did the boss battles, I feel like we only did like Ridley boss battles. We haven't done all the boss battles from a game or like in general, but like if we did, I feel like Arachnus would be up there. Like this one from AM2R, like this is such a good boss battle. I really think it's stellar job. I don't know what else to say about it. Stellar job.
I loved it. Yeah. And like I think that to follow up on something you said, like I do love that, in this game that you see like you see like old familiar faces, like you see Arachnus, or later in the game you see Ceres, or like you run into the chorizo. So like I do love the, like, some of these bosses that we've encountered before do show up. But I think that with Arachnus in particular, because he's like the first boss you fight in Super Metroid or whatever, right? Like he's kind of like he's kind of like a jobber in Super Metroid. So
he is definitely a jobber.
He's enhancement talent. So when I went in to fight him in this game, I was like, okay, well, like he sucks in Metroid Fusion, and he's probably not going to be that much harder when I fight him here. And I remember the first time that I did this fight, I got my butt whooped. Like he wrecked me And it took me a while to wise up to the fact that like you need to actually bomb him and use his momentum against him. And like, I mean, in Fusion, like you just blast him a couple times and he's a turkey on Thanksgiving. But this one, you actually have to use like, you know, a little bit of creative thinking and go outside the box to defeat him. I think that this is like a really great boss fight. I agree. And it like in particular, I think it's a really great 2D boss fight because you're doing things in this boss fight that like you could only do in a 2D Metroidvania game. Like as great as some of the 3D boss fights are, you can't do this type of thing here, or at least very well. I guess
agree.
Federation Force actually tried to do this kind of gimmick, but we all know how that ended up. But yeah, like this is such a cool fight. I love the you have to use the, you know, his own momentum against him. Last night I was fighting him and I ran out of missiles. I spam my missiles way too quickly, I think. But I was fighting him, ran out of missiles, but it was able to pull it off anyways. This is a great boss fight. Yeah, I totally agree, and I think that like they just keep the bosses in this game are just like very, very strong, and I think Arachnus kind of sets the tone for that.
For sure, and I love, you know, you got to think outside the box, right? You can't just like spam, you know, jump, get out of the way, and spam him with shots, jump, get out of the way, spam with shots, right? Like this is a boss fight that it doesn't require you to mash missiles. You got to actually do something different. I love that about this fight. Like because I didn't realize at first at all what I was supposed to do. I remember when I first played it, like I was like, what am I missing here? And then when you realize that like, oh, he goes up higher after like the second morph ball, I'm like, okay, like because those spikes up there, I just thought were there in case I don't know, I was getting too reckless with my jumps or something, or wall jumping or whatever. I'm like, okay. But no, I think that's such a creative boss fight, and like I said, I wish there were more Metroid boss fights, especially in 2D, that can pull it off well, because I agree, you're right, I don't think this would have worked, like this concept would have worked well at all in Prime. I would like more boss fights that require you to do something strategically rather than just mashing damage at them, right? So, no, great. I think, and this is, Arachnus is the jobber who like jobbed for mad years, but like that put mad matches under their belt, and now they're on like the Mania pre-show, you know, and they've got a good match. Like they're made it to the big league, so to speak. I'm props to Arachnus.
I feel like Arachnus was the jobber in like WWE, but he goes over to AM2R's AEW, and now he's like a mid-card solid guy and gives you a good fight. Shout out to Arachnus.
He's Cole Cabana or something.
Faring not quite as well, I think, as the Gamma Metroid, and then maybe that's unfair to call him a boss since they're not like
not really
necessarily bosses.
Kind of a boss. Like I don't know, it's weird because like the Metroid bosses and then the non-Metroid bosses are just like unrelated. Really, I would say it's like a Metroid boss, but maybe not like a mini boss overall. Maybe.
I mean, whatever. We'll talk about them because this is the first time that you see a Gamma Metroid, and I think that. To me, I've kind of talked about this before, where like I'm not like the biggest fan of the evolution of Metroids in general. But I think that if it were me, I would have maybe just had them with your base Metroids evolve into Alpha Metroids and just like skip Gamma and skip Zeta and just go like right to Omega or something like that, because it doesn't feel like that much more threatening than an Alpha to me, and in fact it feels less threatening because it moves slower, so they're easier to hit. So yeah, I don't know. It's okay. It's just okay. We've had this discussion before. I think recently I like the whole evolution of the Metroids. It's just they don't make them scary enough and crazy enough, because like okay, like they have this, like the Alpha Metroid, right, is like this exposed underbelly. You can just like, okay, it's not really even hard, and then the Gamma Metroid essentially has the same problem. Like I really wish they should take the family, or not the evolutionary chain or whatever, like, because it's not really evolution, it's more of a metamorphosis, right? Like it's evolutions over multiple individuals in a species, but whatever. Anyway, so the metamorphosis of like the Metroids, the life cycle, so to speak, right? Like I think they have to ramp up the Alpha and the Gamma and all of that and make them scarier,
and make them stronger, make them faster, like give them crazier patterns. Like I hate how you fight up against like an Alpha Metroid and then a Gamma Metroid, and they do the same floating that they're all doing. Like they don't change up their movement, they don't change up their aggression at all, really, and you can really use the same tactics against all of them. So I don't think it's like fundamentally there's an issue with Metroids having like a life cycle. I think there's a lot of potential there. It's just always not executed. Like they make it so that the base larva, it seems the scariest or strongest a lot of the time, unless you go to the other side of the spectrum and you're at Omega or Queen, right? Like there's no in between.
Yeah.
Everything in the middle of those are don't really feel like a threat, but they could feel like a threat. I don't know why they don't make them stronger and scarier and more threatening bosses or whatever you want to call them, than they are. Because I agree, like a Gamma and an Alpha in this game aren't like, I'm like, oh my god, like wow, I'm trapped in here with this thing. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna mash on it and that's all good. I really wish they would kind of lean into it more. Like these are Metroids. Like Samus is going out of her way to literally exterminate this entire species, right? Like the whole kit and caboodle. And we get there, and a lot of them, they don't even seem that harmful. Like I feel like I could go out there with like a baseball bat and just swing on them as they approach me, like float over all slow and whatnot every time. Maybe if they were all larva Metroids, I'd think differently. But yeah, I really wish they would amplify that danger for the other life stages, like they do, I think, for the larva Metroid, and then for the other side for the Omega and the Queen.
I think they do a good job with Omega Metroid as presenting them as like a dangerous threat, but
Omega Metroids I think look dangerous as hell. I think they look scarier than the Queen, or whatever, than like the Queen Metroid. I think at times.
I actually think that the Zeta Metroid looks decently creepy too.
Yeah, Zeta Metroid's cool.
I feel like the Gamma Metroid is kind of I don't know. I feel like it has maybe the worst design of the Metroid. It doesn't look bad. It's just kind of like it looks too much like the Alpha. And then the Zeta looks like just completely different.
The Zeta has this like bestial quality to it.
It looks like a xenomorph from Alien.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like the thing with the Gamma Metroid fight to me is it's too slow, and it's easier to hit him. Whereas like when and maybe it's just the area that you fight him too, because you've just come off fighting 3 Alpha Metroids in the hatching grounds, and like you're on these kind of like very narrow blocks, and you can easily fall and damage yourself. And I think when you fight the Gamma, you're on pretty solid ground, so it's pretty it's pretty easy. But I mean, it's not like this is the first of I think 10 Gamma Metroids that you do fight, so I can understand them making this one a little bit more friendly when you first see it. I don't know. It's okay. All right, let's talk about some of the items that you pick up in the Hydro Station. Like you were saying earlier, Dak, there's a lot of stuff that you can get here to really augment your adventure. And I think that like a lot of it is fairly optional, I want to say. Like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think that you can go through and not get the Varia suit if you don't want to. I think that you go in at the top. I actually think maybe I'm wrong. Someone correct me if I am. But like, so you go in through the top of the Hydro Station, you drop down, and I'm talking about the spring ball. That's definitely optional.
I was gonna say the Varia suit, I think, is like the first thing.
Well, so that was the last thing that I got.
Okay.
It's funny how that works.
Actually, no. Wait, no. I got the wave beam first, and then the Varia suit, and then the high jump boots, and then the spring ball. I think.
I went and got the spring ball first because I remember that it was at the top of the Hydro Station. So I worked my way up there, and I went and fought Arachnus, got the spring ball, and I actually think like I always appreciate the spring ball whenever I get it in a Metroid game, because I feel like it just makes you move so much faster than stopping, bombing.
Yeah, that's what I was like getting at earlier. Is that it's not even that you just get a lot of items in this area. It's specifically that like you get a lot of items that augment like your ability to move around the area like that much smoother and cleaner, right? Yeah. Like you spring ball, you don't have to wait for the bombs going off. The high jump boots, you can just easily clear jumps, and the wave beam like literally opens up like obstacles for you, right? So it all works together like flushly to create I think just a lot more expansive and experience. The possibilities are that much greater. Yeah, I'm forgetting what order I got the items in. I'm just because now I feel like I don't know, but I think the spring ball might have. I didn't know that they were. I guess like when I'm playing the Metro games, I just got them all right. Like I'm just so I didn't even realize they'd be optional or not.
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, I think that you can skip it if you don't want it, which means you can also skip Arachnus if you want to. But
how could you do that? How could you skip that?
I don't know, because that's a great boss fight. But yeah, I feel like the Spring Ball actually paired up with the Spider Ball is like a really particularly good addition to this game, because like you can be in a Morph Ball, you can jump, and then you can just quickly get the Spider Ball going and attach to a wall and go up. I think that the combination of the two is like, it's like milk and cookies in this game, so that's really nice. I got the high jump boots next. Not much to say there. Just a classic Metroid item. Definitely lets you move around a lot easier. The wave beam, I think that this is optional too, because in the room that I was talking about earlier, where it has like the hopping droids, if you go over to the left side, you can bomb the wall, and like there's those circular kind of shoots or whatever, and they shoot you over, and you can eventually get the wave beam. But I bet you that you could probably miss that if you like weren't exploring everywhere. But man, the wave beam just, I was complaining about the Star Wars droid enemies earlier, like the ones that pop out.
Yeah, once you get the wave beam,
just creams them. Yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's very satisfying, because you don't even have to like make it like, you don't even have to pretend that you're taking cover, like trying to be like, oh, I'm gonna pop out. Like you just blast them right when you enter a room. And you were mentioning like, oh, like you might not have gotten to something if you weren't exploring, but this area made me want to explore, right? Like I was.
Oh yeah.
I felt like I was going to every like nook and cranny. Like I was trying to get to every corner of this area, just because not only are you finding a lot, there's a solid amount, I think, of missile expansions in this area too. So there's a lot to find in this area. I think even later when you come back, you can also get like some more power bombs and super missiles too. So there's a lot of stuff you can find in this area on your first and return trips, and just how it's set up and like all the different ways you can move around it and the things you find there like make you want to continue to search and like try to get up as high or as low as you possibly could. So I'm glad that I didn't realize any of that was optional, because I ended up running into everything, and I'm glad I did.
I want to reiterate. I think it's optional. It could be. I don't know. So I could definitely be wrong. So actually, the last thing that I got in the Hydro Station was the Varia suit, and I love the old Chozo statue fake out, where like you got to roll underneath and go to the room next to it. Something so classic Metroid about that to me that I love it. And the Varia suit looks awesome in this game too.
Oh,
actually.
yeah.
The pixel work looks wicked. I know that like. We all love the Varia suit in Samus Returns. I think it looks fantastic, but like this Varia suit, just in the way that the pixels look, just really, really pops to me. Like the green in particular, like the little lights that come out. I think it looks like really, really good.
Yeah, I agree. It does have like that Samus Returns quality too. I think they're pretty similar. Like this would be like the 2D pixel interpretation of it, more or less. So yeah, I think it looks really solid. I'm very glad that since Other M, like whoever's making Metroid has gone out of their way to make Samus's suit look really awesome, because of how low the bar was set after that game.
There we go. We had to get it in.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so you said that Arachnus was your favorite part about this whole area. I'm going to go the other way and say that while I think Arachnus is awesome, my favorite thing about this whole area, and probably the reason that it sticks out to me the most, is the music. And I actually, I'm not going to say I do have like frequently I've sat in my office before and just put on a 30-minute loop of this music. It's so good. It's a remix of Green Brinstar from Super Metroid, but it sounds like decidedly Metroid Prime-esque, and like to add to that, it sounds like, I can't think of a better way to say it, but it just sounds like very aquatic, like kind of it reminded me of almost the Torvis Bog remix of Red Brinstar from Metroid Prime 2 in the way that it was kind of understated, so it kind of like it felt like you were listening to it underwater or something like that. This is such a good piece of music, I think, from this game, and honestly, the music in AM2R as a whole is absolutely fantastic. So we should we should also give a shout out to our buddy Darren from Shine Sparkers, who actually helped compose a lot of the music for this game. But yeah, I mean, this music to me is just like such a memorable track, and really helped kind of set this area apart from a lot of the others. It's kind of like we were talking about the other week, where like, or last week, I guess, with Federation Force, where like a remake or like a reinterpretation of an old song can really add personality, but like it doesn't. This one to me doesn't feel like cheap. Like, you can tell it's a remake, but when I think of it, I'm not just like, oh, this is a remix of Green Brinstar. I'm like, this is the Hydro Station. It's very, very well done.
I mean, it 100% sounds like a leftover Metroid Prime track or something. Like, that wasn't used for, like, it has that distinct, like, synthy Metroid Prime sound.
Yeah.
Like, it's so right on the money for Metroid Prime. And I love that like, you have that Metroid Prime sound in a 2D Metroid. I love that, like, flip on that. And, like, you're right, it is a Green Brinstar remix, but because it has that, like, Metroid Prime flavor to it, it feels like a whole new track, and, like, has its own identity and character. And yeah, I'm not surprised that you mentioned this as your favorite. I knew you were going to say this was your favorite part. And I feel like you might have even said that specifically in your notes. Oh, best piece of music in the game. I agree with that too. It's if it's not that, it's like top 3. That was one of the parts of this area that makes it so iconic, because that music just starts up and it's like, whoa, this is really good. Like, again, it's such a nice creative take. It's not just a remix. Like, it has its own style to it, and I love how it incorporates like the Metroid Prime style into like a 2D Metroid, while like it takes the 2D reference like source material, and it takes that like 3D Prime style, mashed it together for this. Like, absolutely perfect, really well done. And yeah, it adds to that like aquatic feel. Like, it's perfect. Yeah, 100% agree.
Took the words out of my mouth. Yep. Actually, I'm thinking about it now, and I'm like, is this the best piece of music in the game? It is an amazing piece of music, but man, the music in this game is just so strong. I feel like the surface area is just such an iconic theme. The Golden Temple sounds like just so kind of creepy and otherworldly. I think that like it's so well done, and it really, really adds to the ambiance and the atmosphere. And I think that like, this just really shows you, kind of going back to Federation Force last week, like how important music is to the Metroid franchise. I feel like, because when you get it right, it just makes everything so much better.
100% agree.
And that that is the case in point here. All right, so I have maybe not. Well, I guess this is a critique actually, but it's not. Again, it's not like a serious one. You kind of mentioned earlier where like there's a ton of expansions, a ton of missile expansions, a couple energy tanks, I think. But to me, I actually feel like there's not really anything noteworthy. And this actually is kind of a persisting theme in AM2R in general for me, where like there's a lot of expansions, but I feel like almost all of them are like fairly simple, things to do. Like, we talked about Chozodia from Zero Mission, where like, you had to jump through the lasers, or like space jump through the lasers. You had to keep your shine spark for like 100 minutes and go into different rooms with it. I feel like this one is like very, very easy for the most part. Every expansion, it's pretty much just like bomb this part of the wall, roll up and get it, and Bob's your uncle. Even coming back into the Hydro Station later in the game, like, you can come back after you get the screw attack and you can get some power ups and whatnot. But even those, I feel like are fairly straightforward. And I would say that this is actually probably a critique I would levy at Samus Returns as well. But yeah, I don't know. I just felt like nothing really stuck out to me a whole lot getting expansions in this game, or like nothing really stumped me where I had to go back and like figure out, okay, how am I going to do this? I don't know. Did you have the same experience?
Yeah, I had this experience, and I feel this way about something else in the game too, which I'll get to. But yeah, with the expansions, I think that's like just one of the natural things about like being a remake of like a really old game, right? Where if you go like too far away from the original, like, are you like, I think people are trying to just look for a remake that's remade in a modern way, but that also means that like some of the weaknesses of the original game might show through in the remake too. Like, not always. There's a lot of like Zero Mission fixes a lot of stuff and certainly AM2R and Samus Returns fix a lot of stuff from the original too. But one thing I think maybe it didn't do so well, I agree, is there aren't any like complex or like puzzling things to really get done for getting these expansions. And similarly, I kind of wish there was more going on with the area, like some underlying plot somehow, right? Like for me, I don't like. Not that I need it, but it's nice, like, to have like a little something else that I'm also going through. Because at the end of the day, you're really just looking for things and trying to unlock like the next area and then killing more Metroids. I wish there was something a little bit more, maybe something like, I guess the lore works too, but I wish there was something more underlying to everything. And similarly, I wish the expansions kind of had. You're right, I agree, had more depth in terms of like how you looked for them and how you found them. They're pretty simple expansions to get. They only really open up later in terms of like difficulty because you don't have certain stuff, not because like it's kind of hard to get to them or you need to shine spark or this or that. Yeah, so I kind of wish there was more depth for that, and I wish the area in terms of like what was happening had a little slightly more depth. I don't mind getting lost in the wilderness and getting lost in like an area, and I love that, but at the same time, I kind of wish like maybe there was just a little more going on. And I think that expanded into like how the expansions feel as well. So yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I'm gonna make kind of an excuse here for AM2R and I guess Samus Returns as well. We're like, I understand why the expansions are like easier to get because like typically like just by the nature of this game, like you're going down further and further and further into the planet, and you don't necessarily come back up. Like when you're playing Super Metroid, it's more of like a side-to-side experience where like, Brinstar is next to Meridia, so you can go between the two and you can go back interchangeably, but like you don't necessarily, like, once you're done in the Hydro Station, you don't necessarily go back up
you don't need
the Golden Temple.
Right, exactly. You don't need to like do that if you don't want to.
Yeah, and like I think that the nature of the expansions in this game is like, there's really only two things that you need to come back for. Like you can get 100% of the expansions except for the aforementioned screw attack ones, and you can just move on with your there's no real reason to come back until you get like much later in the game into the distribution center. So I think by the nature and design of Metroid 2, that kind of that kind of forces them to maybe stagger the expansions in a way that's like they're more accessible because you don't come back. So I can kind of understand that, but I think that there still could have been some pretty cool expansions or some cool puzzles to get the expansions. I mean, you do see it at some places later in the game, so that's one area that I do feel like the Hydro Station is a little bit lacking in, is just kind of those like really cool, really fun to get missile expansions that we've come to know and love from other areas. So yeah, I don't know. It's a critique, but it's a small one.
I think it's still executed well. It's just that you get to the point you have a couple minor nitpicky things. I don't think anything is necessarily like game breaking, and I do think those are valid critiques though.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I know the deck. You said that you had something else that you wanted to expand on. Take it away.
No, I think I was just I think it was more so like, yeah, I kind of wish there was a little more like the underlying like why you're in the area other than just trying to like get farther into it and kill more Metroids, right? Like maybe there was some kind of underlying like Chozo thing you could find while you're also going through this. I don't know. I just kind of felt like there was something that could have also been added to this. That was the only thing I wanted to expand on otherwise. I'm trying to think. No, I think that was pretty much it. I think you really covered a lot. The only expanded I wanted to go on to is like, yeah, I kind of wish like maybe this game and Samus Returns to an extent too, like maybe get away a little bit from like it being so centered around just literally going around and killing the Metroids because of like how repetitive it can get. Now, like this area in particular, I would have liked a little more lore, you know, like or maybe a little more like Chozo related stuff I could find in this area because we're like in a specifically like Chozo left behind area that they occupied and built themselves and used, right? So I wish there was a little more there. You get some lore, but it really boils down to, okay, like the Chozo had running water for the most part, right? Like there's, I wish there was a little more that went into it and like gave us, or like something I could also be looking for, Chozo related, other than like just kind of looking around to kill Metroids or otherwise like progress through the area. I think there were some opportunities to do that, and I kind of wish they had. But yeah, that's. I think that's where my mind was going with that.
And that's fair. I don't disagree with that. But overall, I do think that like the Hydro Station is a fantastic area in Metroid. It's not like super big, and none of the areas in Metroid 2 are honestly super big. But I feel like it's really impactful. It left an impression on me the first time that I played it.
Right.
And I'm happy that we got to do it, and I'm happy that we kind of got to spend a little bit of detailed time talking about AM2R. And this won't be the last time that we talk about AM2R, to be sure. But I was, playing through this, I really, really love this area, and I'm probably going to keep playing tonight, actually, just because this game is so good.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a bad idea. I should probably do the same, because I was playing this, I'm like, it's nice to enjoy. It's not new, but it's like refreshing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's a good game to play if you like want some Metroid and you don't want to like replay Super and Fusion or Samus. Obviously, I'm just listing the other 2D Metroids. But when you think of like replaying some Metroid, like I've replayed the Metroid game so many times that it's just nice to play something that feels a little newer and fresher to me while still familiar. So.
Yep, I 100% agree. 100%. All right. Well, any parting thoughts that you want to get off your chest before we get out of here, Dak?
You mentioned a game you picked up earlier on the episode, and you didn't tell us what the title is. I know you're not going to, but can you give us like a hint of what it is?
How about this? If you listen to the episode, I already gave a hint of what it was. I mentioned something. Nah. I mentioned something in this episode that will give you a hint of what it is, and it's probably obvious actually what it is, but maybe that could be our next Inspired by Metroid title. I'm not sure. We'll talk about it off air.
All right,
I think I mentioned it to you before that I grabbed this game. I'm not sure, but
I'm like, now I'm gonna be like, oh, what did he say? I'm gonna have to go back immediately and listen.
Everyone else, keep your ears perked, and maybe you can spot our next Inspired by Metroid game. But until then, that is going to do it for us, friends. We are going to get out of here. I had a great time talking Hydro Station and AM2R on Mapping Metroid. We'll try not to wait so long until the next Mapping Metroid. I didn't realize how long it had actually been. But that's going to do it. We are out of here. We want you to check us out over on Twitter at Omega Metroid Pod. And of course, check out Dak and I on Twitter at DakCity_ and at Spiteri316. Once again, we've got that sweet discount code. Enter Omega at the Metroid Database store, and you can pick up some posters, some stickers, some decals, whatever you want. Go and check it out over on Metroid Database. And check us out over on Spotify, iTunes, Podbean, wherever you get your podcast. Like and subscribe, and tell that Metroid fan in your life where they can get their fix. We've been seeing a lot of people saying that they appreciate the content that we're making in these dry Metroid times, and we really appreciate those remarks and comments ourselves. So thank you to everybody. And until next week, guys, we will see you then. Take care.